In the quiet suburbs of Bendigo, Australia, the unthinkable unfolded. It wasn't a stranger lurking in the shadows, nor a sudden crime of passion. It was a meticulously plotted betrayal. Samantha Kelly, a loving mother of 4, trusted the people she called housemates, unaware they were conspiring against her. She shared her home, her life, and even her children with them. But behind closed doors, these individuals, Christine Lyons, Peter Arthur, and Ronald Lyons, were hatching a plan that would not only shatter her family, but also horrify an entire nation. On a chilling January night in 2016, Samantha's life came to a brutal and tragic end. She wasn't just murdered, she was preyed upon, her vulnerabilities exploited by those who should have been her protectors. The weapon of choice? A hammer wielded with merciless intent. The motive? A twisted desire to claim her children as their own. The orchestrator? Christine Lyons, a woman driven by obsession and an unrelenting need to become a mother, at any cost. This is the story of Samantha Kelly, a vulnerable woman who trusted too much, and the shocking betrayal that left 4 children motherless, and a community grappling with unimaginable loss. Before we dive deeper into this shocking tale, if you believe in justice and giving a voice to the voiceless, kindly hit the subscribe button. Together we can ensure these stories are never forgotten. Samantha Kelly was a devoted mother of 4. Despite her struggles, including intellectual impairments and financial instability, she did everything in her power to care for her children. But her life was far from perfect. She lived in a small bungalow in the backyard of a shared property in Kangaroo Flat, Bendigo. Sharing this space with Christine Lyons, Christine's partner Peter Arthur, and their mutual acquaintance Ronald Lyons seemed to provide Samantha with a semblance of community. But what appeared to be a supportive environment masked a dark and sinister undercurrent. Christine Lyons, unable to have children of her own, was consumed by a desire to become a mother. This wasn't a fleeting wish. It was an obsession that dictated her every action. She had approached multiple women, pleading for them to act as surrogates, but each time her request was denied. When those efforts failed, her desperation took a darker turn. Living under the same roof as Samantha and her children provided Christine with the perfect opportunity to fuel her obsession. Her fixation wasn't just on the idea of being a mother, it was on Samantha's children specifically. Christine began referring to them by new names, names she had chosen for her own hypothetical children. For the 2 youngest, this rebranding wasn't just a slip of the tongue, it was a chilling indicator of the future Christine had planned. Behind Samantha's back, Christine, Peter, and Ronald began conspiring. They told anyone who would listen that Samantha was an unfit mother, a drug user who had abandoned her children. But Samantha's reality was starkly different. She was a struggling but caring mother, doing her best to provide for her kids despite the odds stacked against her. Their plot wasn't one of impulse, but of methodical planning. Christine began sourcing prescription drugs, beta blockers, antihistamines, sedatives, all with one purpose: to eliminate Samantha. For days they spiked her drinks, forcing her to consume a deadly cocktail of medications under the guise of helping her feel better. But when this slow poisoning failed to achieve their goal, Christine decided to take a more direct, brutal approach. By the night of January 22, 2016, the plan had escalated from deception to outright murder. Christine Lyons, consumed by her delusion of becoming a mother, directed Peter Arthur to take action. The slow poisoning method had failed to take Samantha's life, leaving them desperate to move forward with their twisted scheme. As the clock ticked past midnight, Peter Arthur made his way to Samantha's bungalow. He carried a hammer in his hand, the weight of his intentions heavy in the air. The once quiet property was about to become a scene of unimaginable horror. Samantha, already weak and groggy from the sedatives, was defenseless as Peter struck her repeatedly. The hammer came down at least 7 times, each blow a calculated step toward their sinister goal. Samantha's cries echoed briefly in the night, but no one came to her rescue. The same people she shared her home with, the people who had positioned themselves as her support system, were now complicit in her brutal death. Ronald Lyons, who had been lurking nearby, was brought in to assist with the aftermath. The pair worked quickly, wrapping Samantha's lifeless body in a blanket and preparing to dispose of the evidence. Christine, meanwhile, waited for the confirmation she so desperately sought. When the deed was done, she expressed no remorse or hesitation. According to Peter's later testimony, Ronald returned from the bungalow and told Christine, "You're the mother of these children now." Her response was chillingly simple. About time. Their next steps were calculated but chaotic. Ronald purchased shovels, and the three conspirators drove to a dry creek bed near Maryborough, 30 kilometers away. Under the cover of darkness, they buried Samantha's body, believing they had erased her existence and cleared the path for Christine to take over the children's lives. But their actions were far from undetectable. The community noticed Samantha's absence almost immediately. Neighbors and acquaintances began asking questions, but Christine had prepared her alibi. She told anyone who asked that Samantha had abandoned her children, claiming she had run off with a man and left her responsibilities behind. The lie was as cold and calculated as the murder itself. But lies have a way of unraveling, especially under scrutiny. The authorities were soon involved, and the trio's web of deceit began to crumble. What they thought would be a seamless transition to a new life was about to be exposed as a horrifying crime. For weeks, Christine Lyons and her accomplices believed they had successfully covered their tracks. They continued their lives as though nothing had happened, with Christine stepping into the role of caregiver for Samantha's 4 children. She even went as far as changing the names of the 2 youngest children, calling them by names she had chosen long before the murder. But suspicion grew among Samantha's family and friends. They couldn't reconcile the image of a devoted mother with the claim that she had abandoned her children. Michael Kelly, Samantha's brother, began to ask questions, and the unsettling inconsistencies in Christine's account started to emerge. Samantha had been described as a loving mother, fully devoted to her children despite her challenges. The notion of her leaving them voluntarily didn't sit right with anyone who knew her. On February 5th, 2016, 2 weeks after Samantha's disappearance, law enforcement received a tip that led them to the dry creek bed near Maryborough. There, beneath the scorched and disturbed earth, they discovered Samantha Kelly's remains. The brutality of her death and the callousness with which her body had been discarded sent shockwaves through the community. As investigators delved deeper, Christine's story unraveled. Her web of lies began to collapse under the weight of evidence and testimonies. Witnesses recounted Christine's obsession with Samantha's children and her desperate desire to become a mother at any cost. Bank records, witness interviews, and forensic evidence painted a damning picture of her involvement. Peter Arthur, who had already been arrested, became a pivotal figure in the case. Under questioning, he confessed to the murder and detailed the roles played by Christine and Ronald Lyons. According to his testimony, Christine had orchestrated every step of the crime, from the initial poisoning attempt to the decision to use a hammer when the sedatives failed. His confession was instrumental in piecing together the chilling events of Samantha's final days. Ronald Lyons also found himself ensnared in the growing case. Though he maintained that he had not participated in the murder itself, evidence showed that he had purchased the tools used to bury Samantha's body and assisted in the cover-up. His devotion to Christine was evident, but it was a loyalty that would cost him dearly. The trio's attempt to frame Samantha as an unfit mother who had abandoned her children was exposed for the lie it was. The very community they sought to deceive rallied around Samantha's children, ensuring they were placed in the care of her brother Michael and his partner Danielle. The children's adjustment to their new life was marked by both trauma and resilience, but they were finally in safe hands. The stage was set for one of the most chilling trials Victoria had ever seen, as Christine, Peter, and Ronald faced the full weight of justice for their heinous actions. When the trial for Samantha Kelly's murder began in 2018, it gripped the public's attention with its chilling details and twisted motives. Christine Lyons, the mastermind behind the heinous crime, sat in the courtroom alongside her two accomplices, Peter Arthur, her former partner, and Ronald Lyons, her ex-lover and cousin-in-law. Together, their sordid plan to murder Samantha and claim her children as their own was laid bare for all to see. Prosecutor Fran Dalziel painted a damning portrait of Christine Lyons as a woman consumed by an obsessive desire for motherhood. Deprived of the ability to have children of her own, Christine's fixation on Samantha's children turned deadly. The prosecution argued that she meticulously orchestrated every stage of the murder, from the failed poisoning attempts to the brutal hammer attack that ended Samantha's life. Dalziel described Christine as the key architect of the crime, detailing how she had manipulated Peter Arthur and Ronald Lyons into carrying out her deadly plan. Peter, driven by devotion to Christine, was the one who delivered the fatal blows to Samantha's head. Ronald, equally ensnared by Christine's influence, assisted in the disposal of Samantha's body, purchasing shovels and helping bury her in a remote creek bed. Key evidence included Peter Arthur's chilling confession, forensic findings that matched the hammer to Samantha's injuries, and testimony from neighbors who recalled the trio's suspicious behavior after Samantha's disappearance. Bank records revealed Christine's financial struggles and her growing desperation to maintain control over Samantha's children. Christine Lyons' defense team attempted to distance her from the murder, portraying her as a victim of Peter Arthur's impulsive violence. They argued that while Christine had an obsessive desire for children, she had not explicitly ordered Peter to kill Samantha. Her lawyer pointed to her history of intellectual disabilities and a traumatic upbringing, which they claimed diminished her moral culpability. Ronald Lyons' defense followed a similar narrative, asserting that his involvement was limited to helping dispose of the body out of fear and confusion. They portrayed him as a man with limited intellect who had been manipulated by both Christine and Peter. Peter Arthur's testimony became the trial's focal point. In exchange for a reduced sentence, he recounted in harrowing detail how Christine had convinced him to kill Samantha. He described the failed poisoning attempts and how, on the night of the murder, Christine had insisted that the plan move forward. Arthur's confession was damning, not only for himself, but also for Christine and Ronald. He described how Ronald had stood by as he bludgeoned Samantha with a hammer and later helped bury her body. The courtroom listened in stunned silence as Peter recounted how Christine, upon learning of Samantha's death, expressed satisfaction and immediately began caring for the children as though they were her own. In June 2018, the jury returned their verdicts. Christine Lyons was found guilty of murder and attempted murder. Supreme Court Justice Stephen Kay sentenced her to 30 years in prison, with a non-parole period of 23 years. Justice Kay described her actions as heartless and thoroughly evil, emphasizing the calculated nature of her crime and the devastating impact on Samantha's children. Ronald Lyons was convicted of attempted murder and assisting in the murder's aftermath. He was sentenced to 12 years and 6 months, with a non-parole period of 9 years. Justice Kay acknowledged his lesser role, but noted that his actions were driven by loyalty to Christine, rather than coercion. Peter Arthur, having pleaded guilty to murder and cooperated with investigators, was sentenced to 22 years in prison, with a non-parole period of 18 years. His decision to testify against Christine and Ronald was crucial in securing their convictions. The trial's conclusion marked a small semblance of justice for Samantha Kelly's family. Her children, now under the care of Michael Kelly and his partner Danielle, faced the daunting task of rebuilding their lives. The older children, haunted by the memories of their mother's murder, leaned on each other for strength, while the youngest began to grow up in a home filled with love and safety. The case left an indelible mark on the Bendigo community and sparked national conversations about the vulnerabilities of women like Samantha and the lengths some will go to fulfill their darkest desires. Samantha Kelly's tragic story remains a haunting reminder of the depths of human cruelty and the devastating impact of manipulation and obsession. Her life, marked by love and resilience, was cruelly stolen in a plot driven by greed and twisted desires. Yet, even in her death, Samantha's legacy lives on through the resilience of her children and the unrelenting fight for justice by her family. Under the care of Michael Kelly and his partner Danielle, Samantha's children have slowly begun to heal. Their journey is one of unimaginable loss, but also of hope and recovery. Despite the scars left by their mother's untimely death, they are surrounded by love, support, and a commitment to honoring Samantha's memory. The Bendigo community, once shaken to its core, rallied behind Samantha's family. From candlelight vigils to efforts supporting the children's future, their collective resolve to remember Samantha and protect others like her shines as a beacon of compassion and solidarity. By sharing her story, we ensure her memory is never forgotten and that her children grow up knowing their mother's life made an impact. If Samantha's resilience and her family's fight for justice moved you, consider joining us in keeping her legacy alive. Subscribe to our channel for more stories that uncover the truth, seek justice, and honor the lives of those who were taken too soon. By subscribing, you're not just staying informed. You're joining a community that believes every story matters, just as Samantha's does.